Well, hello again. I had a situation today, which is still going on right now, that it drove me nuts when I done a install for a new client. I set up the CPE about 3 weeks ago up on a pole, and I went on and configured it and everything, gave it an IP and all. And now 3 weeks later, I went back to put the wire in and PoE and the router and all that good stuff. Well, the way I do things is I look at the last IP on that AP has given out in the app itself, so I know what the next radio should be. Well, from the time I set that radio up to the time I got back, I've already set up another or quite a few CPEs, and since that radio was not online, it didn't show the IP, so it was the IP showing it was available. It was 10.10.4.25 says it was not used. It was not in the list. That's because the radio was not online. So I figured I can use that. And I wasn't watching close enough that another radio already had that. So what happened was I set that as 0.25, and there was another radio at 0.25 as well, but they had the power off because it's in the RV and they shut all their power off, so that didn't show up. So I set it to 0.25 and turned it on, and just happened after I got the CPE powered up, it was working. I got their account set up. I got the credit card put in. Got all the invoices, everything working. All of a sudden, on the app, on the phone, it just dropped out. I'm like, okay, but the signal was looking great. It was like -50 on, you know, both transmitting and receiving. -50, no problem. But it was dropping out. There was a little, you know, a tree there, but I was like, well, I got another radio in this RV park that's going through 2 trees of the same size. I said, I don't think that's the issue. So I moved the radio. I put a ground block up on the little pole that I had and added a 100-foot cord so I can actually string it around the tree and actually physically see the AP. I set it there and pointed to it. It ran great for 5 minutes. Dropped out. And I was working off my my app on my phone. I didn't have my laptop, which laptop log in that way, it gives you more information all on one screen. So I said, it's got to be something real simple. It can't be the radio. I just don't think it would, because I never had one of them radios do that. I said, maybe I didn't crimp the ends, you know, on the wire that I just ran. So I took them and unplugged them and crimped them a little bit more just to be sure. Ran for 5 minutes. Disconnected. And then I say, okay, I'm going to go over to my RV where my laptop is, tie into the router, log into it so I can actually log into everything, see everything for the whole site. And I was sitting there scrolling. I'm like, there's a 10.10.4.25, 2 of them. And I was looking at the other radio because I noticed another radio was dropping in and out. And it's the one that was on 0.25, but they were not home when I started, or at their RV, but they got there after I started the install. So I didn't see that address on the app. But then when I got on the laptop, I noticed the radio I just powered up is on the same IP as the other one down the street in the RV park. And both of them were, you know, one would connect for 5 minutes, then flip for 5 minutes, flip back for 5 minutes. I said, okay, that most likely is. Which, as soon as I get away from here, I'm going to go over there and change the radio that I just installed from 0.25 to 0.27, and that should solve the problem. But it can drive you nuts, and I was in a rush trying to get that one done. I had another place I had to be. I really didn't have time to do much troubleshooting, but I checked it, and thank goodness that I looked at the screen and saw two of them had the exact same IP, and it just happened to be the ones that were both dropping in and out. But one little number can mess up a whole network. It can drive you nuts when you're in a rush. If I wasn't in a rush, if that was the only install I had, I would sit there and figure it out. I'm like, Toom. But after I figured out what it was, the one that was not there when I started, he came and turned his power on and done some things and then left. So I couldn't log into his radio because he was not online anymore. And the one that I installed has already left too. So there was no power on it. So I didn't have no access to either one of them from the AP to go in and change the IP on either one of them to 0.27 from 0.25. So I'm going to go back over there and get the one that's on a 6-foot pole and get a battery power supply and just sit there like on a 5-gallon bucket upside down, power the radio with another power supply, log into it and change the IP, then plug his cord back into it, and everything should be fine when he comes back next weekend and turns his power on. But sitting there and trying to figure that out, and all I had was my cell phone. You just, few extra steps you got to click on to see all that information that you would normally see on a laptop. You see all the IPs listed and everything. But sometimes it's the simplest thing. I got to change a 5 to a 7. That's it on one of the radios. But it can drive you nuts. But that's part of the game. Just getting in a rush. Sometimes you overlook things, you know, like somebody else, Britt, when he set up his backhaul in his configuration, I think it was his password, he capitalized one letter, and in the other link he actually had a lowercase, and it would not connect, and that's all it was. Check your config, because it can drive you nuts. But that's it on this video. It's pretty much raining today, but I'm going to at least get that one up and running and see if it'll connect. Let it run with the new IP 0.27, because there's no other radios with that in it, as I can see in the, you know, on the laptop. Even the ones offline, I can see the IPs. So it should work, should be able to do it. Put another power supply, use another Ethernet cord, power it up, see if it stays online for 10-15 minutes. If it does, unplug it, plug his wire back in, and he should be ready when he comes back next weekend. But man, I tell you, one little number can drive you nuts, and being in a rush does not help. But I'm just glad it's not the radio, the wire, or anything. It's just a number I got to change. And I wish I was able to change it remotely, but I can't. Because nowhere in WISP software I see that I can actually log into the radio to be able to change that configuration of a radio remotely. But maybe they'll add that to it. Or if there's something I can turn on that wouldn't let me do that, I don't know. If you know anything that I can do to turn on to be able to give access to a radio that I'm not in that network itself, so I can get that deep into the radio remotely, let me know in the descriptions below this video. But I'll talk to you in the next video. Take care.